Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Wrestling News Live 5. My name is Adam, and I'm being joined once again by Battle JR. How are ya?
I mean, that's my official gimmick now.
That's your gimmick now.
All right,
Yeah.
all right, I'll go with it. So I'm wearing a hat. I mean, this isn't the it's not like a Jim Ross hat, but yeah. So Battle JR. So, but he's already if I'm the bad JR, he's the one in the black hat. So should I wear a white hat? I don't know how to do it.
That's true. Yeah, if we're doing the old NWA style thing, yeah.
Yeah.
If we were doing Jim Crockett Promotions,
Not to be confused with Jim Crockett Promotions. Which is
I knew you were going to let me get away with that.
That's the wrestling that's advertised in the back of the old wrestling magazines. Hotel wrestling back here. Anyway.
I was thinking about this, actually. I was thinking we are reviewing 1988, but we're only reviewing one side of 1988. We're only reviewing so far the WWF side.
Sure. We didn't get into the hotel wrestling side. That's not in my contract to do the hotel wrestling.
Okay. There's a whole JCP side out there.
Yes, Jim Crockett Promotions. Correct.
Yeah, correct. And JCP was doing some good stuff back in '88, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, no, they were. We talked about this in the previous audio that we did about the Royal Rumble in 1988. But yeah, no, the NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions, was very much a viable number 2 promotion at the time. And if you talk to people in the South, was very much the number 1 promotion. People liked Jim Crockett Promotions, some. Their style more than the WWF. But what I want to do, and we'll get into this as we get into the show, but work rate, man, was it secondary to storytelling in the WWF, and it worked. This event, which we'll talk about, was something to behold. If you guys haven't seen it, this main event, 1988, February 5th, I definitely suggest going back and taking a look just for purposes.
Definitely,
but,
it is.
We'll get into that.
It is on the network. If you were subscribed to the network, which, by the way, I'm told is only $9.99.
I heard.
Yeah, I've heard. I've heard that. Michael Cole might have mentioned it once or twice.
A couple of times. Stephanie and Hunter, something $9.99. The crowd was chanting it, I think. So $9.99.
I think I remember that.
Yeah. Cheaper than Netflix.
I could be wrong, but was 1988 the year that they did the bunkhouse brawl, where the two guys were on the back of the truck and they were fighting and they both bladed and both got fired because JCP had a no blood policy? Was that 88?
I believe that was the 88, the one that went opposite of the Royal Rumble, I believe. But yeah, I think that was the one that went opposite of the Royal Rumble that caused the I think it was in Maxwell Coliseum. Yeah. So wow. I believe you're correct about that. But here's the thing about JCP back then is that it was, you mentioned blading. You would see nothing like that. There was no blading whatsoever or anything like that in the WWF, and even obviously there's some controversy with it within JCP. But WWF and NWA were very, very, very different promotions at the time. So,
oh yeah,
and there were times as we went on, and we'll get into it as time goes on, I suppose, especially if we start doing WCW, but where they tried to emulate the WWF, and that's where they get into trouble, and had some of the worst. You talk about wrestle crap. I mean, there's some terrible, terrible WCW early 1990s things out there, and that's because they were trying to emulate a lot of what the WWF did. So,
I was talking about a upcoming show where it's debate style, and it's going to be you versus Nick the Greek, and it's going to be 1-on-1, 3 questions. We may not get to the third question, depends if we get to third fall. As we know from the 88 Rumble, not all 2 out of 3 fall matches go to the third fall. But
this is true.
But if it does,
tell it. So Nick the Greek is another frequent guest of yours.
Yes.
On this channel, and so what you're saying is you guys are going to do a debate style, if I'm to understand you correctly, right? Mm-hmm. Trivia kind of.
Trivia, but sort of. Yeah.
Best 2 out of 3, not bad. That's a good idea.
Best 2 out of 3. And what I was thinking was, the loser of this debate has to watch the what was that? Something of Horrors match. It was Abby and Cactus, the one with the electric cage. With the electric chair.
Yes, Halloween Havoc 91, correct?
Yes, Halloween Havoc 91. It was
Oh my gosh, what was that called?
I want to say Chamber of Horrors or something like that.
I keep wanting to say Treehouse of Horrors, but that was a match with that was Bart Simpson.
Right.
Bart Simpson.
I was thinking the loser has to watch that match.
Oh, yeah. God, was that terrible? Abdullah the Butcher. Yeah, no, that is a fate that I would not wish on my worst enemy.
So, it could be worse. It could be. It could be spin the wheel, make the deal.
Jake the Snake and Sting. I still would take that over. No, that was as bad as that was. I would take that over.
The coal miners glove match.
Oh my God, yeah, that was what was that, 92, Halloween Havoc 92, you can be forced to watch. I don't know if you remember before. We haven't even gotten into the show yet, but that's what we do. You would be. Let me see. What was it? Survivor Series 1993. Mm-hmm. Survivor Series 1993 was the most embarrassed I think I was ever as a wrestling fan.
Was that the one with Doink, Team Doink, and Dink versus Jerry Lawler's?
Okay. Oh yeah. That was that one. It was supposed to be Jerry Lawler and the Knights, but Jerry Lawler, had some issues legally for some statutory rape issues that is his wont to do, and so he was actually suspended. Not so much suspended, but he was at least taken off TV while he sorts the legal issues out. And when he was doing that, he was replaced by Shawn Michaels. So Shawn Michaels had his Knights versus versus the oh God, who did they take on in '93?
Wasn't the one with Bret Hart and his brothers with Bruce and
yes, I'm sorry, of course. So it was Bret and the Harts. That's right.
Yeah,
it was the Jerry Lawler feud. So that was fine. I could even deal with that. But there was a match in there with, and I'm trying to remember, with Bastion Booger, with the Head Shrinkers on the same team, and I can't remember who else was on their team. But the entire match, they were eating a turkey drumstick, and they were slipping on food in the ring. They were slipping on turkey, and it was just poor. And Bastion Booger was more concerned with eating than he was winning the match, and that was extraordinarily embarrassing, and right up there with the Undertaker dying.
Yes,
at the Royal Rumble '94. That was
'94. Yep, and
where he died. He went up to heaven. He died.
And that was I heard that was was it, who was it that they used when he went up into the he kind of like disappeared on the screen, and I heard that they used Owen. Is that true that they actually
as
used
Owens as a stand-in?
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that. I know that they obviously used a dummy to hoist up into the ceilings of the arena in Rhode Island, but yeah, I didn't hear that about using Owen's silhouette. That'd be an interesting tidbit. I didn't hear that, but it was just that was so ridiculously hokey that that was an embarrassing moment.
I think I could maybe, and we are going to review the main event for February 5th, 1988. We are.
Wait, we are? That wasn't my understanding. We're going to review this.
we're just gonna bullshit about wrestling for an hour.
Sure, let's go.
What if the loser had to watch the Kennel from Hell match?
Oh my gosh! With Big Boss Man and Al Snow.
Al Snow, yeah.
The Hell in a Cell match. This is okay. So what we should do is we should do a whole Wrestle Crap edition of this show, but that's for another podcast.
Podcast.
The Kennel from Hell. That was what a just mess that was, with the dogs on the outside, and the dogs were shitting all over the outside of the ring, and they couldn't control the dogs, and the match itself was terrible. And oh my God, Boss Man!
It was one of the worst things I've ever seen. That was a very interesting angle, though. That was over Pepper. That was when Big Boss Man killed Al Snow's dog, Pepper.
An aider.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
and no, fed
her to Al Snow.
That's right. He cooked
her to Al Snow.
Yes, right. Fed it to Al Snow. Yep.
Right. That's great storytelling. And listen, that was the attitude. That was the height of business, right? I mean, that was the year 2000, if I'm not mistaken. 2000 November, yes. So you're in a situation where that was the best business year they ever did, and they had a storyline where one of the combatants takes the dog of the other combatant, kills it, and cooks it and feeds it to his opponent. That's really where we were, and they did the best business they've ever done that year. Go figure.
Awesome. We will get to the Attitude Era. I know. I mentioned it. I was the one who brought it up, but the last podcast that we did, JR, you just wanted to run right into 1998.
98.
You just wanted to skip the entire Hogan era, the New Generation era, which, by the way, it's maybe better off if we skip the New Generation era.
I think we should.
Jump right into the Attitude Era. But
here's the thing that's interesting too, is that there was no Saturday night's main events at all in the Attitude Era, not at all. So that this staple, this really popular show, did not that in WWF lore there was not a single episode or edition of Saturday night's main event from the Attitude Era, which you could say spanned from 97 through 2001, I guess.
I would say right up to the invasion angle, yeah.
And then 2002 started the ruthless aggression era. Yeah. Speaking of Saturday night's main event, let's go. Yeah. Let's get into it.
Hey, what a segue.
Yes, that's right.
That's right, because Raw started in 93. Anyway, so what's interesting about Saturday night's main event, or in this case, the main event, was this show and the pay-per-views were kind of the shows that you needed to watch at the time to keep up with storylines in WWF. This was before Raw, this was before SmackDown. So other than the Big Four, which 1988 was the year that gave us the Big Four, Saturday night's main event, and whatever storylines you got on Superstars and what was the show that was on Saturday mornings? It was Superstars, was on Sundays.
Wrestling Challenge.
Wrestling Challenge. Right.
It depends on what market you were in. It depends on what market you were in, but Superstars, at least in my market, aired on Saturday mornings, and Wrestling Challenge aired on Sunday mornings. Then you also had lesser shows like Wrestling Spotlight and things like that. But really, the two main syndicated shows were Wrestling Challenge and
this is where I think Saturday night's main event, or the main event, was so important, because this was the show that gave us storylines. Really, this wasn't a thing where you can just tune into Raw and SmackDown and keep up with the storylines. You needed to watch the Big Four pay-per-views, which, for those of you who are, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably know what the Big Four are. But Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series. Later on, we got the Big Five. If you count the Big Five, if you count King of the Ring,
I do.
Yeah, Big Five, which started in 93.
93. Yep.
93. But yeah, so Saturday night's main event was kind of a big deal back in the day. Before we jump into the review, what did you think of this main event on a whole?
You mean this show?
Yes.
This particular edition? I thought it. God. It's so hard to rate this show specifically, only because if you go by the in-ring action, it was bad. But if you go by the actual just spectacle of it all, and historical significance, I couldn't take my eyes off of it. And a lot of that had to do, I was around for its original airing, and I just remember the feeling. It's hard to put into perspective if you didn't experience it, how big a deal this was, this particular edition of Saturday night's main event, but it aired on a Friday, so they just called it the main event. But for our intents and purposes, we're going to probably interchange the two. But if we're saying the main event, it's again under that Saturday night's main event umbrella. But this specific show was such a big deal. It's hard to put in perspective. So me going back and watching it and just remembering the feeling at the time, just a big event feel that you really don't get today. The big event feel that was surrounding the show is really what made it. And, the rating that this particular edition of the main event did was astronomical. This show did a 15.6 rating. It depends on who you talk to. 15.6, some people say 15.2, whatever. Peaked at anywhere from 33 to 35 million viewers. Think about that for a minute. 33 million viewers at its peak. That's the interest that was going in to this edition of Saturday Night's Main Event.
Well, this match had arguably the biggest match ever in the main event's history. Of course, I'm talking about the Strike Force versus the Hart Foundation.
Yes. Yeah, that did main event the show. Yeah, we never got the end. They ran out of time.
Yeah.
You know, usually, I thought they used to say the following contest scheduled for one fall with TV time remaining. There's only a minute and a half left. So I was thinking this is going to be like a quick Iron Man match, like a 90-second Iron Man match.
Yes.
But no, it just went off the air, before it finished.
All right. Well, let's jump right into the show. It starts with a video package of we get our opener, and then we get DiBiase backstage with Andre the Giant, and oh man, I forgot how good DiBiase and Andre were together. This promo was so good. Andre says he's going to get his hands around Hogan's neck, and he's going to just keep choking him, and he's not going to stop.
Andre giving away his pre-match strategy, before the match, giving away his strategy is what he's going to do, which is just simply choke his opponent illegally for the entire match, and that was his strategy, which he let the rabbit out of the bag. Before we get into this, Adam, if we can back up just for a second, because I think just for context, just kind of contextually putting this in perspective, I think it's important because you started talking about this before when you started talking about what Saturday Night's Main Event was at the time and what it meant to the WWF at the time. And you hit on a couple of important points, but I think there's some other things we can add just for people who, again, weren't around for Saturday Night's Main Event or don't fully remember what it really meant to the promotion. So you mentioned the storyline. So back then, wrestling in general relied a lot on syndicated television. So they would have their hour-long TV, right? That was largely squash matches that would just put over the storylines that would convince you to go to house shows to see these two people involved in the feud battle each other. Rarely did you see a wrestler of any note go against a wrestler of any note on TV. You rarely saw that. You had to go to the house shows to see that, or, as you mentioned, wait to the big four, the pay-per-views to see. So what Saturday Night's Main Event did is it allowed us to be able to have some of those pay-per-view quality matches, outside of those big four. Because, again, you didn't get those on regular television. You didn't get those on the syndicated programs, Wrestling Challenge and Superstars. Now, it was very infrequent. Saturday Night's Main Event happened very rarely. So you had maybe, I don't know, I'm just off the top of my head, maybe 5 or 6 a year, maybe 7, started in 1985, right after WrestleMania 1, and really in the beginning of the whole rock and wrestling thing. Now, why did they have Saturday Night's Main Event? Why was it a big deal? It was on network television. It was on NBC. And that was a huge deal for the WWF. And Dick Ebersol, who was very close with Vince McMahon, wanted WWF on NBC because he saw what kind of big ratings the WWF was doing on MTV during the whole rock and wrestling connection. So that's why in 1985 he started the Saturday Night's Main Event, put it in the time slot, in the time slot of Saturday Night Live that aired right after the late news on Saturday. And we got that in that time slot. You put wrestling right there in a very, like I said, highly rated time slot, Saturday Night Live. It was a really big deal. Now, the ratings that this year specifically, actually, you can even go back, I think, to March of '87. I think it was right before WrestleMania 3, where they had a Saturday Night's Main Event. And it was a Battle Royal was the main event in this episode that did an enormous rating. It did a 13 rating, which still is the highest rating that time slot has ever done on NBC. Think about that for a minute. That is the highest rating a professional wrestling broadcast. That's the highest rating NBC has ever done on that time slot. And that was because it was a battle royal that included Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan. And those are your key players. Anything involving Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant back then was money. Huge money. Look at them and what they did at WrestleMania 3. Look what they did with the attendance at WrestleMania 3. Look what they did with the rating on the show. And Saturday Night's Main Event lasted for a long time. I know. Do you remember when they tried to bring it back a couple of times? Really the golden age was 85, I think, to 91. And then they tried to bring it back actually in 92. Do you remember that at all?
I don't remember it coming back in '92. Um, no, actually, I don't.
Yeah, it came back on Fox, because NBC, the relationship with WWF and NBC apparently was over at that point. But they brought it back on Fox a couple of times. And I remember this because when they brought it back, it was pretty exciting. Ooh, it was in a different time slot. It's 8 o'clock instead of the 11:30 that it used to start. And the main event that day, trying to remember, oh, yes, that was the day that Sid Justice turned on Hulk Hogan. That was Sid Justice and Hulk Hogan versus The Undertaker and Ric Flair. And Sid Justice ended up turning on Hulk Hogan. That set up WrestleMania 8. Did a terrible rating because wrestling was pretty much dead in 1992.
I remember when it came back in, I think, '06.
Yeah, came back in '06 through '08. And when it came back in '06, that's because that's when the WWF, or WWE at the time, came back to USA Network. Remember, they had been on Nashville Network, Spike TV. They'd been away for a while, and they came back to USA. And part of their deal with USA or NBC Universal was to do a Saturday Night's Main Event, a few Saturday Night's Main Event episodes. So they did that. And again, they weren't very highly rated. And, the series died. And that was, I think, the last episode of Saturday Night's Main Event was either in '07 or '08. I can't.
Yeah, I believe it was '08.
Yeah.
So this
context of what this show was, what this franchise Saturday Night's Main Event.
This was a very important. This specific episode of the main event was a very important episode because, again, it had the rematch of the century. This was something that people waited to see since WrestleMania 3. Hogan and Andre 2. This was going to be huge. And like you said, you take Hogan and Andre, and it's a license to print money. Did it live up to the hype? Well, we'll get into that.
Yeah, we will. We will. A lot to say about that.
Just a little bit of spoiler there, but so after DiBiase and Andre's promo, we go back to Hogan, who is backstage, and he doesn't really say much other than blah 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 brother. But oh man,
you forgot the training video.
That's right. Well, that was after. Yeah, that was. And do you remember whose music he was working out to?
Yeah, this is interesting. They did this training montage of Hulk Hogan preparing for this match with Andre the Giant. Apparently, he didn't feel like he needed to do cardio because Andre, I guess his matches really can't go much past like a minute and a half. So we figured no real need to do cardio. So they showed him lifting a lot of weight, and the music would later that they used in this particular instance would later become Jake the Snake Roberts' entrance theme. So it's
arguably the greatest entrance theme of all time, depending on who you ask.
I like it. I don't know that I would say it was the greatest of all time. I like it.
Well, what do you prefer? Do you prefer this theme or his Trust Me theme, his heel theme?
I was just about to say his heel theme in '91 might have been even a little better. It was this just slowed down with Trust Me in it.
Trust me.
So, but anyway.
That's right, Warrior. Reach out for me. Reach out.
Yes. Or The Undertaker. Remember the Undertaker feud you had?
Yes. Never trust a snake. Anyway, God, get you that promo. Anyway, that segment rather. But that's '91, so we're a few years off from that. So that's for another podcast. But
yes.
So we have Hogan talking backstage, and then we have his workout promo, and oh boy, he is oiled up, and Hogan is just looking at his absolute beefiest in these training videos. This was Hogan, I think, at his peak.
Yeah, I would say he was in great shape. There's no question about that. He was definitely oiled up. There's no question about that. I don't know if that's part of his strategy. When Andre tries to choke you, just his hands slip off your neck. I don't know what his strategy is. But yeah, just maybe that's what it was. But yeah, no, he was in great shape. He was at his I would say in Hogan's WWF run, this was him probably at his biggest in the WWF.
Definitely.
Yeah. And again, he was gearing up for his Hollywood debut in No Holds Barred, so he was getting in shape for that as well. So he was in great shape.
Yeah.
And WrestleMania 4, if you remember how he was jacked in WrestleMania 4.
Oh, absolutely.
So.
But that's for our next podcast, actually, WrestleMania 4.
WrestleMania 4.
But, oh boy, that's going to be hell to get through. Anyway, not looking forward to WrestleMania 4.
No.
But we will do it. We will get through it because we're warriors.
Yes, we are warriors and savages and honky tonk men.
And renegades. Do you remember Renegade?
Right. I do remember the Renegade. I do remember the
I was
Renegade.
just watching something. I was just watching, I think it was a Wrestling with Regret on Renegade. I think it was Warrior in WCW. But anyway, so then we go backstage to Macho Man Randy Savage, who is cutting a promo on the Honky Tonk Man. I don't really remember anything specifically great that he said in this promo. I mean, it was a Savage promo.
By number Savage promo. Yep.
Yeah, it was pretty much. Elizabeth looks concerned. The story going into this match is that Elizabeth has a thing for Honky Tonk Man, and that she's going to leave Savage for Honky.
But that was the that was the fear that Elizabeth had, is that the thing about some of Savage's feuds, especially when he turned babyface, and they became a little rapey, I think.
She was mine before she was yours.
I mean, Ric Flair, in '92. So Honky was getting a little rapey here, but yeah, there was that aspect.
Speaking of Honky, or the Honky Tonky Man, as Santino Marella would say.
Sure.
Speaking of the Honky Tonky Man, we go backstage to Honky Tonk, who basically cuts a promo, quoting Elvis songs. He says that he's going to take Elizabeth to Heartbreak Hotel, and he won't be cruel. And what is that Hound Dog Savage going to be, or where is that Hound Dog Savage going to be? And Honky goes, in the ghetto. And in the ghetto? I just lost my shit.
Yeah. No, it was Wayne Ferris, the Honky Tonk Man. He had this character. Down, and I think before we even get to the match, and again, we only have a couple of matches to review here, so I feel like putting things in context is important. Also, Honky Tonk Man, he was always an interesting figure to me, because he was not a very good wrestler in the ring, but his character, he really had his character down. And now this is really the feud that turned Randy Savage babyface, because Randy Savage had been a heel for his entire WWF run until he ran into the Honky Tonk Man, and I think it was the fall of the year before, '87. And really what ended up happening was Honky Tonk Man was bragging about being the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time. Of all time. And what he was saying that, of course, Randy Savage said, "Oh, no, brother." And he took umbrage to that claim. And Randy Savage, who at the time had a legitimate claim to be the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time, he had the longest reign of over 400 days, to that point. So he had a legitimate claim. Honky Tonk Man, and people seemingly forget this, was not even close to the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time. That was a gimmick. So for people who, whenever he, you talk about the greatest Intercontinental Champions of all time, some people with a straight face say the Honky Tonk Man, and that was a complete gimmick. He, Adam, wasn't even supposed to win the belt. He wasn't. There was so much going on behind the scenes regarding the IC belt and the Honky Tonk Man at various times. Honky Tonk Man wasn't supposed to win this belt. He won it from Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I think it was June of '87. So just 3 months after Steamboat won it. And if you remember, in the podcast that we did, I had mentioned that Ricky Steamboat, his wife, had some issues with the WWF management, at least his wife did, with WWF management, thinking that Steamboat should have been pushed even harder. Steamboat should have been number one. And it was getting to a point where it was coming to a head. Steamboat then finally said, he wanted to leave the company to spend more time with his family. So they said, we have to get the IC belt off of him. And they were going to give it to the natural Butch Reed. But as was as was often the case in the WWF at the time, Butch Reed went AWOL. I don't know if he was on a drug binge. I don't know if he got lost on the way to the arena. Nobody knew where Butch Reed was. He was supposed to win the belt from Ricky Steamboat.
I don't think he was even really a natural.
Yeah, I don't think his hair wasn't natural. But here's the point, and here's the problem. So enter Honky Tonk Man. He was supposed to drop it to Butch Reed. Vince was talking, as legend has it. Now, who knows if this is true, but I've heard this story many times, that Vince was talking to Hulk Hogan, of all people, saying that Butch is supposed to get the title. I can't find Butch Reed. Who's going to get this title? And then Honky Tonk Man happens to be walking by, and Hulk Hogan says, give it to him. So Vince says, okay, calls over Wayne Ferris, says, you know what? You're getting the title tonight. And then, boom, his title reign was born. His title reign went until August of '88. But on this very night, he was supposed to drop the title to Randy Savage. But Honky Tonk Man, knowing that there was going to be, and he said this himself in interviews, he said this himself, that he knew that there was going to be 33 to 35 million people watching this program, and he did not want to drop the belt in front of that many people, Adam. So what he ended up saying was, he said, I will drop the belt to Savage anywhere else, but I don't want to drop it to him here tonight. That sounds an awful lot like Bret Hart in '97 to me.
Yes, but it does.
Yes. So he somehow got his way. Somehow Vince McMahon said, okay, you don't want to drop the belt to Savage. We'll do some convoluted finish, which we'll get to, and you won't drop the belt. What that ended up doing was setting off a chain of reaction. Randy Savage ended up not winning the belt later, but instead winning the world title. The world title that was promised to Ted DiBiase. Ted DiBiase was supposed to win the main event at WrestleMania 4, and he didn't because of this, really in part, Honky Tonk Man saying he didn't want a job, Randy Savage then becoming Vince McMahon having an idea, seeing how over that Randy Savage was becoming, saying, you know what, let's go with Randy Savage as the world champ. And also Vince's fear of giving a heel, not fear is a strong word, but reluctance giving a heel the title coming out of WrestleMania. He didn't like doing things like that.
I could be wrong about this, and please correct me if I am. But the reason why Randy Savage won the title in the finals of the WrestleMania 4 tournament when he beat Ted DiBiase was because he didn't want to drop the IC belt, but Vince made a deal with Savage saying, if you drop the IC belt, you'll win the world title at WrestleMania 4. Is that correct, or am I mistaken?
I hadn't heard that either. I don't know that to be the case. I'm not saying it's not. I'm trying to think about the timeline, if that would make sense, because he dropped it. Oh God. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know I don't know. I know he had a babyface run coming, obviously. And when he dropped the title, he later became a babyface, obviously pretty short order. But I don't know. I mean, I hadn't heard that, but I know that initially the idea was for Ted DiBiase to win the title at WrestleMania 4. I know that was the original plan, and then Hulk Hogan would beat him back for it at WrestleMania 5, and instead they ended up going with Savage. Now plans change a lot, so maybe at one point they had thought they were going to go with Savage, and they decided to go with DiBiase instead, and then went back to Savage. But Savage was super over for sure at this event. So I'm sure that had played a big part in having Vince go with him too, seeing how over he was as a babyface.
Yeah,
but,
and it wasn't long after that DiBiase introduced the $1 Million belt.
Yes, the $1 Million belt. Boy, when did that debut? That was that wouldn't be too long after this. I think you had maybe a year or so, but yeah. I remember that. For 100 wrestling bonus bucks, that
value of absolutely nothing. Do you remember who DiBiase's manager was in the segment where he introduced the $1 Million championship?
Who his manager was when he unveiled the beautiful $1 Million championship? I do not. Was that Sweet Sapphire? Oh, that was a heel Sapphire. Was that after? Trying to think here.
That had to be after Dusty.
That was after Sapphire had turned on Dusty at WrestleMania 6.
That's
Okay.
right.
So then we're looking at 1990. I thought 1990 was when the $1 Million Belt came about. So yeah, there you go.
Right.
Sapphire turning on Dusty at I remember that. And then leaving the company shortly after that.
That's right.
Yes.
So all right, so let's get into the first match. Macho Man Randy Savage versus the Honky Tonk Man.
Do I get the 100 bonus bucks or no?
Oh yes, you do. You get the 100.
I do. Okay. All right.
Oh no, wait. I'm sorry, you didn't know, so you don't get that.
I didn't know it.
You'll get the 100 bonus bucks anyway, since
I'll take it.
Absolutely nothing.
Thank you. I like charity.
So, Macho Man Randy Savage versus the Honky Tonk Man. Of course, Macho Man is led to the ring by the beautiful Miss Elizabeth. Honky Tonk Man comes to the ring with Jimmy Hart, and a few moments after Honky Tonk was introduced, we're introduced to his girlfriend, Peggy Sue.
Oh yes.
Do
you know who Peggy Sue was?
I have no idea who Peggy Sue was.
Peggy Sue was Sherry Martel, Sensational Sherry.
No, it was not.
Correct. Yes, it was. That was Sherry Martel. And let me see. Pretty sure that was Sherry Martel. Now I'm 99% sure, but there was a 1% chance I could be wrong. But
okay.
But yeah, that's
wow. Did not recognize her at all. I honestly thought it was a rat.
Yeah. You thought it was who?
Just some ring rat, honestly.
Oh, ring rat.
Honky Tonk Man was messing around with.
I'm pretty sure that was Sherry Martel.
Wow.
Go on. I'm going to see if I can confirm that, but go on.
Okay. So, Macho Man Randy Savage versus the Honky Tonk Man. What are your thoughts on this match?
I love watching Randy Savage work. I do. I love watching him work. I love the overhead elbows. I just love his style. But this match wasn't very good. But it was typical what you're going to get in the WWF at this point. If you have these two pros and they're both pros, it's what you expect out of it. Was it a 5-star match? No. Was it a 4-star match? No. But that's not what you're going to get. And the finish certainly hurt it. The thing I don't get about the finish, Adam, because Randy Savage won via countout, and everybody knows the only way you can win a title in the World Wrestling Federation is via pinfall or submission. So when Randy lost via countout, he was pretty excited. And I don't know if he forgot the rules, but he was then saying that he should win the belt. He was doing this thing with his waist. Where's the belt? He was very confused. And then he's up there celebrating. He's got Elizabeth on his shoulder, and he's very happy. I don't know if he knew at that point that he was booked to win WrestleMania 4. Maybe that's why he was so happy. But yeah, clearly he was a little confused. He was really excited.
Yeah,
he wasn't going to win the belt.
I'm not taking anything away from Macho Man Randy Savage. I love Macho Man Randy Savage. Sure. I'm a big Randy Savage fan. I was at the time. However, I always felt like his matches lacked a little bit of psychology. I felt like he could have been a little bit better. And I'm not saying this match. This match was...
this match lacked psychology.
Yes. It was a bit of a letdown. I think that Savage and Honky would have better matches than this.
Yeah, well, Honky Tonk Man is a solid worker, but he's nobody that's going to wow you ever. And I can't think of a single match where he did that. Savage, Savage was very meticulous in how he laid out his matches. He was somebody who planned his matches out well ahead of time. So he was very move for move. Everything had to be, the legend is with his match with Ricky Steamboat, all 27 2 counts. They were all planned out. There are some wrestlers that like to call it in the ring, but Randy Savage, everything, he's very meticulous, very much a almost OCD in that way. So to say his matches don't have psychology, he maps them out ahead of time. So you would think that he would map out the psychology ahead of time. Just watching his matches, especially this Randy Savage, which was at the tail end of his physical prime, he was very, very, very fast, quick, crisp. Everything he did had a purpose. Every movement he made, even his little idiosyncratic movements around the ring, every step he took. So he was he had no wasted movement. And that was one thing I liked about him. In terms of his actual wrestling matches, I thought he had some good matches. thoroughly enjoyed, obviously, the Ricky Steamboat match, albeit a little bit overrated. I did like that match. I like the match he had with Ric Flair at WrestleMania 8, although,
My top.
yeah. And so I think he's had some really good matches. And then if you go before WWF, he was a different animal before WWF athletically. So yeah, I think he was a good wrestler.
Oh, me too. I definitely think he was a good wrestler.
Yeah.
But what I meant was Savage and Honky would have better matches than this.
Yeah. I guess I'm not surprised that this match underwhelmed because of Honky Tonk Man, because he sucked. I mean, he's just bad.
There was a lot of gyrating in this match. There was a lot of turning to Elizabeth and gyrating his hips. And as you mentioned before, the work rate was second in WWF, where it was number one. It was prime in Jim Crockett Promotions. It was the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, but you look at who's on top of the promotion. Really, Hulk Hogan's on top of the WWF, and you can't or don't want to certainly outshine Hulk Hogan. And Hulk Hogan wasn't the best worker from a technical standpoint, so you weren't going to get great matches. You're actually going to get yet. WWF had a lot of great workers. They had Randy Savage, had Ted DiBiase, had even people like Greg Valentine, who was a good worker for his time. But when they would get to the WWF, they would just forget how to work. Because they know that that's not their job anymore. The work rate is very much secondary. But then you look at Jim Crockett Promotions, you look at NWA, and you have Ric Flair at the top. And Ric Flair is going to be the one in the main events. And Ric Flair can have, as he's famously said, a great match with a broomstick. So that's where the two promotions were different. You wonder what would have happened if history would have been a little different, and say Vince McMahon ended up going with Ric Flair to take his company national, I should say, instead of, I'm still thinking of Butch Reed, instead of going with Hulk Hogan. Because if he went with Ric Flair as his big star to take the company national, maybe it would have been more of a work rate based company. But that's not how history played out. So.
No, it's not. WrestleMania 1 definitely changed a lot of things in terms of the wrestling business. You mentioned something about WWF having great workers, but not really having great. I don't want to say that there are a lot of great matches from this era. You mentioned a couple of them. Ric Flair and Randy Savage, which is my top all time. Randy Savage and Ricky Steamboat. Of course, which didn't get nearly as much attention as Hogan Andre. But it's still rated, I think, among internet fans, internet smarks, if you will, as one of the greatest of all time, and rightfully so. I think I think that's right on the money when people say that Savage Steamboat is one of the best of all time. Maybe slightly overrated, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of wrestling today, where you have guys like Roman Reigns and Cena, who I think could have good matches, but it's different now because now they're maybe being told to not have good matches.
It's funny. A couple of things with that. I think I disagree with you a little bit on that. And here's where I disagree. I think that Roman Reigns and John Cena are light years ahead of Hulk Hogan as far as a worker is concerned. And they are very good at working WWE style, right? So when you look at like the best workers in the world, and you're talking about, your Okadas, your Kenny Omegas, your AJ Styles of the world. If you're looking at those guys, Roman Reigns and John Cena are different workers than they are. But John Cena and Roman Reigns, WWE style, are good wrestlers. I don't like either of them. They're not my cup of tea. As a matter of fact, I loathe both of them personally. Not personally. I don't have anything against Joe the person, Roman Reigns, or John Cena the person. But personally, they're not my cup of tea from a wrestling character standpoint. But I will admit that they're good WWE style wrestlers. And I think work rate nowadays means so much more than it did then. So I think that you actually have to be a pretty good wrestler, unless you're Braun Strowman. You have to be a pretty good wrestler to get over. And I think Roman Reigns has good wrestling matches. I will admit he does. And so did John Cena. John Cena became somebody who was capable of working the WWE style very, very well. So, but back then, in the era that we're in now, or I'm sorry, the era that we're in 1998 or 1992 or 1987, as it were, work rate was so secondary. And I think the reason that the match is overrated, Steamboat Savage, is because it stood out so much amongst a bunch of crap. This match stood out so much that people were just in awe by this match because everything else around it, nothing compared to what they did at WrestleMania 3. So, we'll get to 1992, I'm sure, at some point. But 1992 is very much a turning point where they started going towards better work rate. And that was, again, the Bret Hart era. Yeah. And that's the new generation era that we'll, I'm sure, at some point, unfortunately, get to. So.
I think maybe we should stop at 92 and just skip to 96 and just skip 92 through 96.
I agree. Awful. The less we have to talk about Isaac Yankem DDS, the better.
You mean no King Mabel?
No King Mabel. I don't want to talk about Abe Knuckleball Schwartz. I don't want to talk about T.L. Hopper. I don't want to talk about
Aldo Montoya.
Aldo Montoya, Man Mountain Rock. I don't want to talk about him.
I liked Man Mountain Rock. I was a Man Mountain Rock mark.
Oh yeah, you did. What was his finisher?
Oh, yeah.
What was his finisher?
Jeez.
I don't remember.
Was it something like
a Palooza tour that he went on that I couldn't find anywhere? Yeah, he had this tour that he was going on. I couldn't find any dates.
I don't remember his matches. I just remember him being in the center of the ring with the guitar and playing a guitar solo, then fireworks, and then after that, I couldn't tell you a damn thing about the guy.
Yeah, no, he was in that era with what, Adam Bomb?
Adam Bomb, yeah. Who went on to become? Wait, don't tell me. Was it Mantis in WCW?
No. Oh,
no,
God.
It wasn't Mantis. It was. He didn't become Mantis.
Gosh.
Oh my gosh. Not Cronus. That was Crush. That was
Brian Adams.
Brian Adams, yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. All right.
That?
Well, you know what? We'll figure it out for when we do the podcast on that era of Adam Bomb and company. We'll I'm sure we'll be prepared.
It was not Mantis though. It was can't think. This is killing me now. Anyway, all right. So back to
contacts anymore. I thought when he went and changed his gimmick, I thought that his contacts, his eyes, I thought that was his real eyes. His eyes were, what color were they? Like, I don't know, orange, red. Remember the contacts that Adam Bomb had? I can't remember. Oh, all right. I have to do my Adam Bomb. I'm going to watch some Adam Bomb matches after this. I'm going to Best of Adam Bomb. We're doing this. It's going to be all squash matches against Barry Horowitz on Superstars.
Barry Horowitz. Give that guy a pat on the back.
There you go.
Right, yeah, that's right. All right.
What an era that was. Wow.
So getting back to Honky Tonk and Savage, we just went all around the world to get there.
We did. we went into Wayne Gill versus Adam Bomb. Everybody, Google it.
We went into WCW 2001 to come back to February 5th, 1988.
All right.
Oh boy.
Yes.
Anyway. So. All right. So, any other thoughts on this match?
On this match?
Why don't we just get to the finish, which was Peggy Sue getting involved on the outside. Macho Man goes to the outside and threatens to do something to Peggy Sue. I'm not sure exactly what he was planning. Probably give her a good slap or something. This was '88, so
it was a punch in the face.
Yeah, beating women in this era was not unheard of.
This is 1988. If I want to slap you in the face, I'll do it. Yeah, it's 1988. We can do that.
Send for the man. Right. So he gets hit from behind by Jimmy Hart with the megaphone. And then we have Elizabeth getting involved. And then we have Macho running Honky into the post on the outside. Macho gets back in, and he wins by countout.
He was very happy about it.
Yeah. Very happy.
Shades of Lex Luger beating Yokozuna by countout, and then they threw like the biggest parade I've ever seen for a countout victory in a championship.
Wasn't that because Lex Luger told people that the night before in a bar he got very drunk and told people that he was going to win the title?
Well, he was going to. He was going to win.
Yeah.
He was wrong. He bet. He lost it. He probably bet on himself and lost. And he was in the match. He
rose. Yeah.
Right. Yes.
All right. So, any other thoughts on this match?
Not really. We can move on. Like I said, I think the backstory that I laid out before was more interesting, I think, than the actual what took place here. Again, you could tell that something was different because of the convoluted finish. Savage was supposed to win, but he didn't, and history played out like it did.
Yep. All right. So then, if I remember correctly, we then go back to Jesse and Vince, who were the commentators during this event. And oh man, I forgot how much I disliked Jesse Ventura as a commentator.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, Jesse, I thought was great as a commentator.
Hated Jesse Ventura.
Oh, yeah, no, I loved it. I thought he was fantastic. I thought he brought a realism to it, other than that he blindly rooted for the heels no matter what. But I think I don't know. He's the first ever heel commentator, I think. I don't think there was one before him. There's a trailblazer. He's a trailblazer. Why didn't you like him?
Did Gordon Soley work with any? Oh, no, Gordon Soley worked on his own.
Yeah.
Gordon Soley worked on his own.
There was no such thing as a heel commentator before Jesse Ventura. I mean, Roddy Piper did some commentating, but he wasn't full heel. I'm saying before his days in WWF.
Right.
Boy, let me see. Yeah, Jesse Ventura really was the one who, at least on any large scale, was the first heel commentator. So he was a trailblazer.
He just makes my ears burn. I can't take his voice. Okay. I can't take. I don't know. I don't like him.
Yeah, I'm a big Jesse fan.
What's that?
I'm a big fan. I like Jesse. I thought he was good. I mean, his work rate in the ring was there's a reason he wasn't wrestling anymore. But he was a good character, though. I agree with you on that.
Yes.
But in Hulk Hogan and he actually had a lot in common in that regard, as far as their character and personas are concerned. Not so much the execution of the character, but the appearance. But here's the thing: Jesse might have been actually, I think, legit jealous of Hogan because of the similarities and Hogan becoming as popular as he did, and they both ripped off superstar Billy Graham. And he's like, "Wait a minute, I ripped off Billy Graham first. I should. Why am I not? Kissing babies and things like that." But here's my point about his commentary. Terry, I thought he brought a credibility and a realism to like big matches. Like if you go back and watch WrestleMania 3, the main event there, for example, I thought the way and even WrestleMania 6, that stands out to me when he was calling Hogan Warrior. I thought he was great. I thought he added a realism to it that you don't get in a lot of commentators. Certainly not today, but and his voice, I thought he had a good voice, but to each their own. He was better than I don't know who were some comment that Lord Alfred Hayes. He was better than him.
Yes, I remember watching WrestleMania 1 and just watching Lord Alfred Hayes stand in front of that guardrail, just shaking his hand. He was terrified being on camera that first WrestleMania.
Lord Alfred Hayes wasn't a great commentator.
No, he wasn't.
Better than Art Donovan, but that's a different story.
How much does this guy weigh?
Right. Well, we'll get into that King of the Ring 94, I think, was it? Yeah, we'll get into that. The worst.
94. How much does this fellow weigh?
Right. Is he supposed to do? He just hit him with a chair. Is he supposed to do that? Yeah, that was bad.
This is really bad.
How much does this guy weigh?
Or Kathy Lee at WrestleMania 2? That was pretty bad too.
Oh, well, that was when they were doing the celebrity stuff. Yeah, I mean that was. There's been some bad ones, but Jesse, I didn't think was terrible. But that's for another podcast.
All right, that's for another podcast. Yeah. So Jesse and Vince talk about WrestleMania 3. They talk about how Andre was very close to winning, but The referee made the 3 count, but it was a mistake, and Andre should have won, but Hulk Hogan wound up retaining the title at WrestleMania 3. And then we see some highlights of WrestleMania 3, and then we go into, I believe, another backstage segment where what I remember most about this segment was Virgil standing there holding the money, just looking completely bored.
Yeah, he was good at doing that, Virgil.
Yeah. And he had no purpose in this segment other than to hold the money.
Well, he's keeping everybody safe. He's the bodyguard.
He was a bodyguard.
His job is to keep everybody safe.
Because he was protecting Andre, clearly.
He was protecting Andre. He was protecting DiBiase. Andre. He was protecting Andre. That was his role. So he did a good job.
Andre get attacked, Virgil. Thank goodness Virgil would be right there.
I'm going to get to Virgil.
And man, Andre.
Virgil, help.
And Andre had really good facials during this promo. Andre had really good eyes. He really knew how to use his eyes in promos. And again, he says that he's going to squeeze and squeeze and squeeze Hogan and tighter and tighter. And obviously, Andre needed a mouthpiece. He needed DiBiase. He needed Bobby the Brain. But he was competent on his own in terms of promos.
Well, okay. I mean, again, outside of as far as this promo goes, outside of divulging his entire match strategy ahead of time, if I'm Hulk Hogan, I'm listening to this promo, and I hear that Andre is just going to choke me the entire match. That's in squeeze tighter and tighter. I'm going to defend against the choke because now I know I somehow have to just keep my hands up here, and also it's illegal. So I would just know that I'm the champion. So if Andre's just going to choke me, unless he kills me, he's going to get disqualified. So if I'm Hulk Hogan, that promo gave me a lot of confidence that I was going to retain the title based on his strategy. As far as Andre's mouthpiece or needing one is concerned, okay, how can I put this? Andre had a thick French accent, and he also had acromegaly. Which is basically gigantism. So, oh boy, I thought Andre was a horrendous promo. I agree with you in his eyes. I think his facial expressions in his eyes were great. But you know what? Okay, let me rephrase that because I think he's a horrible promo. He's an Andre promo, and that makes it okay for some reason. Like, you know, the fact that he had his own style and then we just came to accept that that's Andre. But, for example, when he won the title later that night, spoiler alert, he said he won the tag team title. And he said, I'm going to surrender the tag team title to Ted DiBiase. I'm like, the tag team title? You know, so Andre wasn't a great promo, but he was Andre, so you got to love him.
Yeah, it was definitely an Andre promo. But what I meant by that was, as long as DiBiase or Heenan did 95% of the talking in his promos, you could let Andre do 5%. It's kind of like when Paul Heyman lets Brock Lesnar speak. It's kind of like, ooh, now he's going to speak. And of course, you know, Brock Lesnar, he's all the way up here when he talks. And I'm going to snap. And he's like, okay, Brock, that's good. That's enough. Now we know why you have Heyman.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But Andre could say, obviously, you know, the thick accent and the deepness in his voice from the condition that he had made him very difficult to understand at times. But for what it was decent.
He was Andre, and you can accept that as being Andre. Lesnar, without getting lost into it, I think Lesnar, if he was given the chance to talk more, Lesnar is actually, I think, can speak really well. His voice belies his appearance, so I think that you have that issue where he has a high voice and he looks like he's a killer, but he doesn't sound like a killer, which is why I think it is good he has a mouthpiece. But he can talk. Andre the Giant, I mean, he virtually can't talk, at least not English. So it was imperative that he had a mouthpiece. Although for much of his career he didn't. When he was a babyface, and he would come and he would cut his promos, and he would do so in that thick French accent. But by this time, for whatever reason, his promos, I mean, just words would just be swallowed up, and every time he opened his mouth, it's like all the words came out at once, and then they got scrambled into a ball and then presented to us, because it was like everything was said at once. It was, he was not a great. He's not very articulate.
No,
He didn't have to. He was 7'4", 500 pounds.
That's right.
When that big, you don't have to be.
That's right. So what do you say we just jump right into this match, which is the rematch of the century from WrestleMania 3, Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant. What are your thoughts on this match?
I thought this match had a lot more energy than the even original match that they had in WrestleMania 3. I thought that the energy in this match was definitely high, which is saying something, because the vast majority of the match was punches, chokes, eye rakes, more punches, a clothesline here and there. It got to a point where when I saw a clothesline, I was like, oh my God, a wrestling move, a clothesline. So, so there wasn't a lot of technical mastery.
And one suplex.
The end, yes, there was a one suplex. It's like Hogan kept punching Andre. There was this moment in the beginning of the match. If you go back and watch this, Hogan continued to punch Andre, right? He was trying to get him down. And Jesse Ventura was marveling at the fact that Andre wouldn't fall. Hogan couldn't believe it. Hogan hit him in the head like 12 times. He was giving him reverse knife edge chops. He was giving him just regular knife edge chops, double knife edge chops. He was giving him everything, raking his eyes. It's like Hogan forgot that Andre can't bump. So I think that he forgot that no matter what he does, Andre's incapable of falling back on his back. He cannot do a flat back bump. Hogan could have ran into him with a car, and Andre would not have been able to do a. So I think Hogan forgot that fact, and he just continued to chop away and punch him. Andre did bump once when he apparently missed a headbutt. I don't know if you remember that spot, but he missed a headbutt, and I don't know what happened there. It looked like he tripped and fell, but Vince said he tried to go for a headbutt and missed.
That's right.
And then, of course, I think actually he bumped one more time. Hogan hit him with a clothesline off the top rope or off the second rope or something. And then Andre actually did execute an ugly, ugly bump where he landed actually on his elbows. And then Hogan hit him with the leg drop and pinned him, but the referee was distracted. But as far as the match goes, yeah, I had a lot of energy. Not a technical masterpiece, but the crowd was really, really into this match, big time, and that led to some kind of atmosphere.
All right, very good.
What'd you think?
I thought this match was better than I expected it to be.
Yeah.
Do I think that it was as good as their WrestleMania 3 match? Well, let's be honest. The WrestleMania 3 match, as hyped as it was not great. But again, Andre is Andre, and really, by no fault of his own, couldn't do much. But there were a lot of chokes in this match. There was a lot of choking, obviously, which
he told you.
We it kind of spoiled that there was going to be a lot of choking in it. Well, I should say Hogan spoiled it. Yeah. Andre spoiled it in his promos by telling Hogan exactly what he was going to do. I was waiting for the spot where Andre gets tied up in the ropes, and we didn't get that spot.
Yes. The famous Andre rope spot where he's sitting there, and that didn't happen. Andre could barely move really in WrestleMania 7, and this was 10 months later. So I can imagine physically he was able to do, very much at this point, sadly. And he got through it. I mean, and you know what, though? It's funny. I was watching this, and this is a point I want to make also, is that I think this is the reason, on a serious note, this is the reason that Vince McMahon and people in his circle really don't value work rate very much. So when you're talking about trying to draw money, and people are like, you should push so-and-so, he's a good wrestler. You should push this person, he's a good wrestler. You should push, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, who ended up getting obviously half-assed pushes, but they got pushes, nonetheless. But, for years, people have been telling Vince to push these people because they could wrestle. Vince is not concerned about being able to wrestle, at least he wasn't, because he thinks that it's about being able to draw, being an attraction. And if you look at this feud and you look at this match and you look at what this drew, 33 million people watching this very match, and then watch the match from a technical standpoint, you will understand why Vince McMahon feels that way. Vince McMahon feels that way because this match is the most watched match in wrestling history by far. And this had, if you count clotheslines as wrestling holds, 2 holds. Two.
Are you counting the suplex?
Suplex and a clothesline.
Okay.
That's it. So, and it's the most watched wrestling match in history. So from that standpoint, I understand now why Vince feels that way. I think today's wrestling fan is much different, and he's stuck in 1988 because in 1988 he was right, but in 2018 that's not the case. I think he knows that now, but it took him a long time to get here.
I just want to say one thing about this is not going to be a joke in poor taste or anything like that. But you said that Chris Benoit got a halfway push. He did tap out Triple H at WrestleMania 20.
He did tap out Triple H at WrestleMania 20, but what happened after when he won the title in that 3-way, right? He won the title. And can you remember anything about his title reign?
No.
His title reign ended with Randy Orton beating him
that's right. And then he got erased. That's right. Then he wound up getting erased from WWE history almost.
Well, Randy Orton won because they wanted to erase Brock Lesnar's youngest WWF champion thing. So they were able to do that, WWE champion. They were able to do that at SummerSlam 90 or 2004. Or was it 2004? 2005. SummerSlam 2004. Yeah. 2004. And when he did that, but Chris Benoit was not pushed as the main event, even as champion, nor was Eddie Guerrero during Eddie Guerrero's title reign, nor was Daniel Bryan during Daniel Bryan's title reign, nor was CM Punk during CM Punk's title reign. It's just they had the championship, but they weren't the main event. And, he did tap out Triple H. You're correct. And but he was never really the main event of the promotion.
It's funny because you don't hear that about guys like Roman Reigns or John Cena or guys who are big. It's always the small guys who end up getting screwed in WWE. But
well, I think it goes to my point. I think that Vince thinks that if you're an attraction, if you're big, if you can, as Kevin Nash once said, turn heads in airports, if you can do that, I think you are more value. You are of more value. That's why the Braun Strowmans get pushes. That's why the Roman Reigns get pushes, and I can go on and on. We know this. We know the names. We know the deal. But in the era of MMA, when we know what a real fighter can look like, where you could be badass and you don't have to look like Ahmed Johnson, and you could be a badass. Now in this era, I think Vince is slow to the dance with that and has been, which is why people like CM Punk was the most over person in his company, yet he didn't push him. And that's why fans bought Daniel Bryan as a legit fighter, because we now know, thanks to MMA, what a real fight looks like, number one, and what real fighters look like. And nobody looks like, the Warlord. Nobody looks like that.
Right.
But Vince is still somewhat stuck in the, you have to be able to turn head in airports for me to give you a push deal. So,
yeah. But now, luckily, I think we're starting to head towards more towards, I should say, the era of athleticism.
Oh yeah, no, without question. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like we're still in the the Warlord area of WWF history. We're not. We've evolved a long time ago, as a matter of fact. But still, the number one guys, though, the number one guys that are being pushed are still people that are in Vince's comfort zone. John Cena, while not overly the tallest man on the roster, was still very much in Vince McMahon's comfort zone. He's big, he's muscular, He could potentially turn heads in airports, that kind of thing. There's a reason Diesel got a push in 1995 before Shawn Michaels did. There's a reason that, or over Bret Hart. There's a reason that Diesel was champion all of 1995, and Bret Hart was in, kiss my foot matches or wrestling pirates. There's reasons for that, because Vince McMahon will always default to the big guy over the guy who's actually good at what he does.
And when you say the big guy, you're not talking about Ryback. The big guy.
I'm not talking about the big guy. No, I'm not talking.
Not the big guy.
No.
But yeah, I mean, absolutely. Diesel was WWF champion in 1995 because, as Kevin Nash said in an interview once, Vince McMahon looked around the locker room and Diesel was the only big guy left. He was the only big guy there, because after the steroid scandal of 92, which was 92, 93, which I'm sorry, I think it started in 91, the steroid scandal.
Yep.
But from the steroid scandal that started in 91 and went to about 92, 93, by 1995, everybody was small. Everybody was, the guys the size of Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. So Vince wanted a big guy. So we got Diesel as WWF champion at that time.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too lost in the weeds here, but it's really a kind of a combination of a lot of different events when it comes to Diesel. But you're certainly right in saying that, after the steroid scandal, there weren't a ton of big muscular guys that were remaining on the roster. But the other thing is that Diesel, and I think people forget this because they remember his 1995 title reign, which was very unremarkable, and they did terrible business, and people forget. But Diesel actually got over organically. And when he was the bodyguard of Shawn Michaels, he came in June of 93 to be the bodyguard of Shawn Michaels in the King of the Ring, 1993, when Shawn Michaels was taking on Crush for the Intercontinental title. He debuted his new bodyguard, Diesel. So Diesel, Kevin Nash, who he was in contact with or had been friendly with, even as Diesel or as Kevin Nash was playing the character Vinny Vegas over in WCW, that contract was up. Shawn said, "You know what? Come on over. I can bring you in as my bodyguard." As 93 went on, especially into 94, Diesel got over huge. Diesel was organically, the crowd was cheering Diesel. Go back and watch the Royal Rumble 1994, where Diesel was, it was known as the Diesel spot, where Diesel was alone in the ring. Everybody was coming into the ring, and he was eliminating them as soon as they were come in. And the crowd was going nuts. Diesel got over huge. King of the Ring 1994. Diesel took on Bret Hart for the WWF Championship. The crowd was cheering Diesel. So Diesel got over organically in that way. But then when Vince went with him, and Vince actually was saying, you know what? The crowd's going with him, and he's the only big guy around with muscles anyway. This is it. This is my comfort zone. And he was never 100% comfortable with Bret Hart. He wanted to go Lex Luger, remember? Right. He wanted to go Lex Luger, and he was convinced not to because Lex Luger was not over. So he had to go back to Bret Hart in 1994 after that WrestleMania. So when he saw that Diesel was getting over, he went that way. But he completely changed his personality in 1995 when he won the title. He won it in late 94. But that whole year when he was champion, up until that November, he changed his personality and made Diesel a different character, basically, a smiling, baby-kissing baby face. And it just didn't work.
Which correct me if I'm wrong, that is why they did the spot where Bret and Luger went over the top rope at the same time in Rumble 94, I believe it was.
Yes.
Yes. 94, the 94 Rumble. Bret and Luger went over the top rope at the same time because they wanted to kind of test the waters with both.
Yes, and the crowd reaction, if you remember, was decidedly Bret Hart. As a matter of fact, I remember talking to Howard Finkel about this back in 2009.
Really?
Yes, I talked to Howard Finkel about this himself, and wow. I said, Howard Finkel, do you remember this, Howard? I said 3 words. I go, "Are you sure?" And he immediately knew what I was talking about. Because when the Royal Rumble 1994 announcement, the winner of the 1994 WWF Royal Rumble is, and there was a big silence. Nobody knew who won. They both went over at the same time. And then he would go and consult the officials at ringside. Right. And he kept saying, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" And then he announced both of them as the winner. But it was just great, the "Are you sure?" So I asked him about that. And he said, "Oh, yeah, no, I remember that. That was where
oh, yes, I remember. I remember that very well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, his voice sounds so different.
Howard Finkel sounds a little bit more like Paul Bearer. But anyway.
Yeah. It's funny because I remember telling him, we had a long conversation, but I remember telling him that I was doing podcasts at that time for a Wade. Okay, so Wade Keller is a pro wrestling.
Oh yes, Wade Keller, very famous. Yep.
Yeah. So Keller has this guy that was doing nostalgia wrestling podcast at the time named Brian Hoops, and Brian Hoops would have me on, and we do this and whatever. So I mentioned that to Howard Finkel because I think we might have done the '94 Rumble or something. And as soon as I said Wade Keller, though, Howard Finkel's like, "Oh my God, I've said too much," and I was like, "Nah, no, I'm not going to say anything." But not that I even talked to Keller. I only talked to Brian Hoops. So, but yeah, it was funny when I mentioned Keller. He was like, "Whoops." Zipped his lip. Like, I gotta go. But anyway.
Ladies and gentlemen, don't adjust your sets. You are still watching our review of the main event from February 1988.
Are we still doing that? I forgot. I had totally forgot.
Yeah, somehow this went into a 1994, 1995 review with Diesel, and then going back to '94 with Brett and Luger. Are you sure? I need to watch that now. As horrible as those mid-90s Royal Rumbles are, I need to go back and watch that. 94, 95, 96 are arguably the three worst Royal Rumbles of all time, but that's for another podcast.
95 was bad. 94 was bad, but it is watchable. 96 was, I didn't mind 96, but it was not great.
96 was the one where they came in every minute. 96 was the one where Sean came in early, and I think he won that one.
95 was the one Sean came in.
95 was the one
number one.
Where they came in like every minute or something like that.
Yep. It's funny, and we got to get back to the main event, but I'll say this last thing. It's funny because I remember Shawn Michaels came in at number one in 1995, and I forgot what the hell was the show before, the Live Wire. I don't know. It was one of those syndicated shows that they had at the time, and they did the whole lottery thing, when the wrestlers drawing the number, and Shawn Michaels drew his number, but the wrestler didn't show the audience what the number was, but Shawn drew his number, looked at it, and said, "It's going to be an easy day for old HBK." And so he like throws the ball away or whatever. So you think he picked number 30, and he ended up picking number 1. So he was so confident and arrogant that even by picking number 1, he was like, "This is going to be an easy day for old HBK." And it put him over big in my book. I became a big HBK fan of that night. I thought it was great.
And that was long before the days of Rey Mysterio, where Rey Mysterio, I believe, came in at number 1.
Number 2, yeah.
Number 2, he came in at number 2, and which is kind of number 1 and number 2 are kind of both number 1. But Rey Mysterio came in number 2 in that famous Rumble, where I believe that was the first 40-man Royal Rumble, and wound up winning that one, if I'm not mistaken, and set the record for the longest time in a Rumble. But that's for another.
Yeah, he set the record. That's for another podcast. Yeah, 2006 set the record, but we won't go there.
All right, so back to Hogan Andre. Now that we've gone to, what was it 2009, 2008, 2009,
right?
And then now back to 1988.
Yeah.
Oh my.
All right. Back to our regularly scheduled podcast.
And now for something completely different. All right, so this match ends with Hogan, because there's a lot to explain here. So Hogan hits a quote unquote suplex on Andre. Andre hits a quote unquote suplex on Hogan. My mistake. Yeah. He goes for the cover, and 1, 2, Hogan brings up his shoulder, and the referee, Dave Hebner, comes down for the 3 count, goes to the outside of the ring, grabs the WWF title, and awards it to Andre the Giant. And we have a new WWF champion, Andre the Giant.
We do. That was it was Dave Hebner was the referee at the time that was refereeing all the big matches. It was Dave Hebner. This was the first time I could remember seeing Earl, because Earl Hebner was the one who was doing this match. And so Earl, let me see. Yeah, because it was always Dave. So yeah, this was Earl's debut, I believe.
Earl, yeah.
Yeah. So, but Earl was playing the role of Dave.
Right.
So anyway, that whole thing I thought was executed really well. I thought it was a very memorable deal. I remember watching it, when it was aired as a kid, of course, but just it was so well done. This was great. It was such a surprise. Nobody knew, at least the casual fan nobody knew that Dave Hebner had a twin. So it was just great. The execution was great. The match sucked technically, but the atmosphere was so intense. Everybody was into it. It made for a great environment. So I was into it. Who cares about work rate? I guess. But
WWF who cares about work rate?
Nobody, and they shouldn't. I would gladly concede that they were right, because this was a match with a great environment, and it was a memorable. There's 30 years ago, earlier this month, that this happened, and it got a lot of people talking about it on Twitter. A lot of people tweeting out the video from this infamous twin referee deal. Great work. This good stuff all around.
By the way, just to clarify what JR means, people were not tweeting this in 1988.
No. No. People were not tweeting this in 1988. There was no Twitter in 1988. But people were tweeting this earlier this month. Yeah, just about how
just past the anniversary of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's good stuff. What'd you think?
Oh, I thought it was not a great match, but good execution, good finish. I like finishes like this. I enjoy finishes like this. Screw job finishes, or whatever you want to call it. But I enjoyed it overall. I thought it was maybe the second best of the Hogan Andre series out of the two matches. I would put their WrestleMania 3 match slightly above this match. Part of that might be because of the hype that was going into that, and the crowd. Was it the Silverdome? I believe it was.
Not the Superdome.
The Superdome, not the Superdome.
Not the Superdome.
brother.
Right.
The crowd in the Silverdome was just really, really hot. The crowd for this match were hot, but to me, it just doesn't compare to the hype of their WrestleMania 3 match.
No, definitely not the hype, for sure. Visually, maybe because one's in a stadium, the other's in an arena. The acoustic arena allow for just a different kind of audio experience.
Good match overall. So then after the title was awarded to Andre, he then turns around and awards the WWF Tag Team Championship to Ted DiBiase.
And then DiBiase's really confused, because DiBiase's like, wait, what's going on? We had an agreement. We were going to sell the WWF champion. I don't want the tag championship. You're not even the tag champ. So it got really confusing.
Really confusing.
Yeah.
And DiBiase, Andre, and Virgil leave the ring. Hogan just looks like he's going to just break down and cry at this point.
Oh yeah, he was on the verge of tears.
And then Hogan turns around, and oh no, there's two Hebners.
Yep.
I would have loved.
That's great.
I would have loved if at this point the Hebners did the Doink WrestleMania 9 spot. Where
yes.
Yeah. I would have loved if the Hebners, just started doing the Doink spot from WrestleMania 9.
I forgot. That's right. That happened to Crush. So
That's
Crush
right.
and Hulk Hogan. Yeah,
that's right.
And they're friends too, if I'm not mistaken. Brian Adams since passed away. But,
yes.
But I thought, I think they were friends. I know Brian Adams ran with the Undertaker. I don't know about Hogan. Anyway, yes. Yeah. So go on.
Lost in the weeds.
Which happened.
So so Hogan grabs one Hebner and screams at him, "Are you Dave Hebner?" and then grabs the other Hebner and screams at him, "Are you Dave Hebner?"
Yeah.
I don't know why my Hogan sounds like Christian Bale Batman. Where are the jokes going? Rachel.
Yes, that did sound like a Christian. That did sound like Bale Batman, definitely.
It was very Bale Batman. Where's my title going? So then we find out that there are two Dave Hebners. One Dave Hebner kicks the other one out of the ring. Hogan grabs the other Hebner, and in a spot where Hogan was going to throw the Hebner, because I don't know which one was which at this point. I think it was Earl.
Yeah, Earl was the one that he had over his head. Yeah.
He grabs Earl, and he was supposed to throw them into Andre DiBiase and Virgil, and of course you were supposed to catch him. Hogan overshoots it.
He did. And oh my God. He did.
He overshoots it and tosses Hebner behind where DiBiase, Andre, and Virgil were standing, and Hebner just takes what looked like a pretty sick bump on the aisleway.
Yeah. I mean, he missed the cutoff, man. I mean, he threw him over. He overshot by quite a bit. So Hebner, here's DiBiase and Virgil, and Hebner just goes flying right over. So I hope he was. I mean, obviously he ended up having and still is having a long refereeing career. So obviously he made it out okay. But
I believe he's retired. I believe that. I'm not sure about Dave, but Earl retired. I'm pretty sure a few years ago with TNA. TNA was the last.
I knew he was in TNA. He's not with Impact Wrestling anymore. But okay, all right. Yeah. I know he was refereeing as recently as a year ago or 2 years ago.
Really? Maybe he came out of retirement. I remember when he went to TNA and they did the Montreal Screwjob spot. I forget who it was with. It was Jarrett and someone else, and they wound up doing the Montreal Screwjob thing. But
something that has been done over and over again to death. Yes.
Survivor Series '98 with The Rock and Mankind.
First time it was redone. That's correct.
Yep.
That's correct. Steve Austin got screwed.
That's right.
Yeah.
Austin screwed Austin. That's right.
Well, Austin got screwed because didn't Shane was the special referee in that match, and it's going to count 3. Shane just flips him off.
Yeah.
But that's 1998. We'll get
that's
there.
19. We keep going back to 1998. We should just
1998 is a good year.
Jump right to 1992 so we can get to 98. Anyway, yeah. 92 is the gateway to 98 because no King Mabel. Anyway,
we're going to take the warp zone. In Mario, you can kind of just like, if you know the code, you can just skip certain worlds. We're just going to go down, the pipe into the warp zone. We're going to come up in 1998.
We're going right to 8-4. Yep.
Hey, we're going right to 8-4.
We're going right to Koopa's castle.
Yep. King Koopa. We're going right there. I never, it's funny. I beat Super Mario 2 and 3 and Super Mario World and all that. Never beat the first one ever. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that insane? That's insane. Anyway,
that's something that you might want to do on your show. Super Mario Brothers original run through.
Yeah, maybe, and then everybody can see how 8-4 is impossible for me, and I can be back.
8-4. I believe it was middle up down was the combination for Koopa's Castle. But anyway,
was it? But that's
for another podcast. A whole nother podcast.
That's for a whole other channel.
That's right.
but go ahead.
So,
sorry, Mario, but your podcast is in a different castle. This is just, yeah, this is way out in the weeds.
This has gotten insane now.
Well, it's late. It's
gotten completely insane. But
let's see. We've gone long, but we'll wrap. All
right.
We're on the last match.
Yes. So then we throw it to Mean Gene backstage, who is with Hogan, and Hogan says, "How much did they pay for the plastic surgery?" Because in 1988, he was completely unaware of the concept of twins.
Right. So he just jumps right to plastic surgery. That, you know how much money it would have taken for Ted DiBiase to convince somebody, random person, to change their appearance to look exactly like a referee that happens to ref in the promotion that he works for. And you know how much money that would have been to convince somebody to do that? And then you know how much money the surgery itself would have been? I'm thinking that is just not at that point worth the WWF Championship. I just think that the payoff, the amount of stress, money that you would have to lay out, the capital you would have to lay out, isn't worth the reward. The reward is the WWF Championship. I mean, is it really worth that much trouble? So I wouldn't think that anybody would have gone to that extent.
That was quite nice.
Yeah, you could just hit somebody with a steel chair when the ref isn't looking and pin him, and you can get yourself a WWF Championship if you want to. You don't have to go to this elaborate plastic surgery route. So, and then have the person. Yeah,
people had to have been aware of the concept of twins. It was
twins
the
mid-90s. Twins weren't invented, I don't think, until like late '89.
Until about yeah.
When Schwarzenegger and DeVito, when that movie came out, Twins. That was the first time anyone had ever heard of it. So twins, what is this that you speak?
So then we have Hogan saying, "How much did he pay the referee? Look at the $100 bill sticking out of his pocket. I didn't see a $100 bill sticking out of his pocket."
No,
and again, he goes back to the plastic surgery, and Gene says, "Oh, I'm sure that. Oh, I'm sorry. Twins was 1988. Twins was actually made. I actually just looked up what year Twins was made, and it was 88."
Oh. There you go. Okay, so
Hogan, come on, get on it, man.
He obviously didn't see, and Schwarzenegger and Hogan were friends. They were friendly.
Right.
He should have known that twins were invented in '88. He knew that.
But it was December. It was December '88.
Oh, so twins had I stand corrected. So then twins weren't even around yet. Okay,
right. Twins were not around. Twins were not invented until the movie came out.
And then the movie came out, and people are like, "Oh, okay, this is interesting."
Yes.
Interesting. Gotcha.
So then we have Mean Gene saying, "I'm sure that President Jack Tunney is going to look into this, and there will be a full investigation."
Yes, there will be a full investigation as to how. I mean, the obvious answer is your referee, Dave. I would imagine Dave would just. I would imagine Dave would just tell you what happened. Yeah, I have a brother. I have a twin brother that Ted clearly paid off, and he's not a licensed official, so this is not a valid championship match. That's pretty much null and void. Jack Tunney, it's done. Case closed. Let's have a tournament at WrestleMania and decide who's going to be the new champ. Instead of awarding the belt, here's the thing that gets me, okay? Because clearly that wasn't a licensed official. And the match should be null and void, and thus the championship should be returned to the previous championship holder, and that would be Hulk Hogan. But instead, they just held it up vacant, as if there's some sort of controversy. There shouldn't be a controversy. He wasn't a licensed official. The match doesn't count. No aspect of that match counts. So, I mean, the match should be done again, you know. But instead, they held the title in abeyance. And they ended up having a tournament to decide who the new champion would be. And we'll get to
the president of the World Wrestling Federation. Right. I have decided that the title will be vacated, and it will be decided in a tournament at WrestleMania 4. I am the president of the World Wrestling Federation, Jack Tunney.
Right.
Anyways.
Yeah,
my Jack Tunney and Andre are very close together.
That would be as if Jack Tunney was doing an impression of Andre.
Yes. Also, this is Andre doing an impersonation of Jack Tunney. As the president of the World Wrestling Federation, I can't get my voice to that level of deepness. Yeah,
you got to get your French accent. You got to swallow your tongue a little bit. So
then we have Hart Foundation versus the Strike Force. Here's a little piece of trivia for you.
Yeah.
What was the name of Strike Force's theme?
Oh my God. I have no idea. What is it?
It was Girls in Cars.
What is it?
Girls in Cars.
I had no idea. Wow. Yeah, I didn't. Girls and Cars.
Girls in Cars. Yep.
Girls in Cars.
Girls in
Okay.
Cars. Yep.
Hmm.
One of my absolute favorite themes. Da 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 da. Boom 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 boom. I love this theme.
You know what? It's funny. That theme that doesn't stand out to me. A theme that stood out to me, tag team division in 1988, was the Demolition theme. I just love the Demolition theme.
I'm sorry?
The Demolition theme.
Oh, here
Demolition
comes the axe. Here comes the
Of the
smasher.
Smasher, yeah. We're Demolition, walking disaster.
Masters.
Yeah.
Pain and destruction is our middle
Is
name.
our middle name? Yeah, exactly. But the Strike Force theme didn't really stand out to me. Yeah.
Our sleep experts will guide you through the heart.
Uh-oh. Was that a commercial break? Is that
At the at the risk of getting flagged.
Yes.
Love this theme. All right. That's all I can play without getting flagged.
No, it sounds like the end of every 80s movie though. Like I just think Karate Kid, I think, I just think of all these, yeah. So
And I could be wrong, but I believe it was also the music that played during the it was in the NES WrestleMania game.
Which WrestleMania game? Which NES?
WrestleMania.
The original WrestleMania game.
Yes. I believe
Is
that
that
was the game.
Is that the one that had Honky Tonk Man, Andre, Hogan,
Yes.
Savage? I don't. Oh, who else was in that? I don't remember the theme being in it. I don't remember there being. That came out in '87 for Nintendo. Might have been. I know Real American was in it. That was my favorite.
Oh, by the way, another piece of trivia before we move on. I don't think there's really much to say about this match, but.
Well, no, the match, the Hart Foundation Strike Force match, only a minute and a half of it aired, and then they had to go. TV time expired, and we never got a finish. That's it. But everybody was still in shock over the Hogan stuff, and that's it. That pretty much wraps up the show at that point.
Yeah.
It does wrap up the show.
But what was it? I forget what trivia it was. But anyway. So that I'm sure we'll come back around to it. That's for another podcast.
Yes.
I'll remember what it was. Yeah. So what did you think of the show on a whole?
On a whole, like I mentioned in the beginning, I thought it was something worth checking out if you haven't seen it. I thought it was a good, historically significant spectacle, and it was something that people still talk about 30 years later. So definitely worth checking out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So. Next, we'll be reviewing WrestleMania 4, which should only take us about 3.5 days to get through. It's a long review.
All right. So I know, and I enjoy it, and I know what we do with the, this review actually was longer than the show.
It was,
which is funny. I enjoy it though. I really do, and I think that we offer some wrestling knowledge that I think. That has some value. But WrestleMania 4 was a 4-hour show, so we're going to have to yada, yada, yada through a lot of that card. So if we don't get to Hercules Hernandez versus, I don't know, whoever he took on. The Ultimate Warrior. He took on the Warrior. So Ultimate Warrior versus Hercules. If maybe we have to yada, yada, yada through that a little bit, we'll get through that in under 4 hours. Trust me.
Yeah. I'm still waiting for Owen Hart versus Skinner from WrestleMania 7, I believe it was, which is the match that was cut from WrestleMania 7.
WrestleMania 8.
WrestleMania 8. Oh, darn it.
Yeah, the match actually that was cut. The match that was cut from WrestleMania 8 was Bulldog versus Berserker. That was cut. Owen Hart Skinner happened, but it was cut short. But Owen Hart, Bulldog and Berserker was advertised, never happened. But Owen Hart Skinner actually happened because they were running so long in that show that they wanted to give time for the Matt Classic Sid Justice versus Hulk Hogan.
That's right. Which that pay-per-view is known for.
Right. Great return in Ultimate Warrior return, though. But again, that's another podcast. We've gone long, so we won't get into that.
JR, thank you so much for being here and being a part of this this channel and being a part of this review. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure. I always enjoy talking about this stuff. So, as you can tell, as we did a review that went much longer than the show itself, and a large part of that is how much I enjoy talking about this stuff.
Awesome. But it's always great to have you. Looking forward to Wrestling is Life, which is going to be our debate slash game show type show, where you'll be taking on Nick the Greek. How do you feel about your debate skills?
Well, I was going to tell you, if you were to ask me that, I would have told you my strategy and everything. And then I learned a lesson from listening to Andre's promo that you don't give away your strategy. So I'm going to keep that to myself, but it's going to involve a lot of squeezing.
Okay, I thought so. Yes, I'm going to wrap your hands around your neck, and I'm going to squeeze. Anyway,
I'm going to take the strap.
How much did he pay for the plastic surgery?
I'll take. Yes. I'll take the strap of my singlet, and I'm going to wrap it around his neck and choke, and hopefully the ref doesn't see it.
There you go. Yeah. That's always good.
I have to count of 5 to break.
Hey, you know what? I promote violence on the show, so and violence among my guests.
Right.
So there you go. So looking forward to that.
Cool.
Also looking forward to our WrestleMania 4 review. Actually, I'm looking forward to reviewing it. I'm not looking forward to watching it again. But the review will be fun.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to watching it, but yeah, we'll get to it.
We will get to it. And thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Follow us on Twitter at I've Got to 5. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, share it around on social media. Leave your comments in the comment section below and let us know what you thought of this review and of main event from February 88 in general. Like us on Facebook. We are Wrestling News Live 5 on Facebook, and also join the Facebook group. Thanks again for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here, JR. And we will see you next time.